Look at how tired I look, because I am tired. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been testing this laptop that I'm going to show you guys for 2 days because I really wanted to get a good opinion of it, and it's been kind of going up and down in my head. This here is the it's 2025 Lenovo Legion 5 Pro, 5 Pro. This is the AMD model, and this AMD model comes equipped with an 8945HX processor, which is just a refresh of the 7945HX. It's literally the same chip. I've reviewed the Intel model of this laptop, and my issue with the Intel is the Intel model, while just a fantastic laptop, only comes with a glossy OLED screen, and there are obvious negatives to glossy OLEDs. It's not the be-all, end-all of screens. The AMD model here is the only laptop of only Lenovo Legion laptop of 2025, the only one that offers the high resolution 1600p in an IPS. It's the only one, which is insane to me. Like, there's one laptop, there's one config that you can buy from Lenovo that offers an IPS screen, which drives me crazy because I don't like glossy OLED screens. But anyways, so I picked this up here, and the problem is there's a major issue with this laptop, and that is the CPU. This laptop here is just like the Intel. It has basically the same type of general configuration, same chassis and everything like that. The main difference here is we're swapping the the Intel HX processor, 255-275HX. We're running with an AMD HX processor, which is a huge downgrade in my opinion. Not in terms of raw power, but other things. We'll talk about that in the video. So this video here, I have like so many laptops. I have these two here. These are all mine, by the way. They're not review samples. These are the Legion. These are the 15-inch models of these laptops here. I have the 5060, 5070, AMD 260, AMD 350. Jeez, so many names. And so I'm going to do a lot of comparisons here. So we have two different options here for the 15-inch, and then we have a 16-inch. So the 15-inch here with the 260 is sold under one SKU, AMD 260. The 15-inch with the AMD 350 is sold under a different SKU. They're the same chassis, but there's, I guess, enough difference to sell them under its own. And then there's the AMD with the big boy Dragon Range with a few different SKUs. So we'll actually pop into the small ones here first. Go into view all models because there's a few different variations here. AMD 260, AMD 260. It looks like there's no pre-cooked ones for sale now, so we'll pop in here and I'll just show you what you can do here. So you can get that CPU. It's the AMD 260 CPU, 8-core CPU. It's basically a refresh of the 8845HS. Very good. This one here, whatever you get your GPU, you get your RAM and all that kind of crap here, but you have two different GPU options. You can go with a 5050 or you can go with a 5060. They're both 8GB GPUs. They're both good. The 5050 is obviously going to be a slightly lower wattage and lower performance. 5060 is, in generally speaking, quite a sweet spot if you can get it for a good price. But I don't think people should sleep on the 5050. I have it as in my Lenovo Yoga 9i Pro. It's very capable. If you need something that's going to offer very good performance with slightly less money, not lose it on VRAM, it is a good option. But I mean, the 5060 does offer fairly considerable better performance, obviously. Then there is the AMD 350 option. This CPU is very similar. It's an 8-core CPU. In both cases, they're going to be 8-core CPUs, so you're not losing anything there. Slightly newer, so it does perform a little bit different. The performance between them is a little bit nuanced. One is, they're better in some ways and worse than the other. We'll go through that in this video. On this one here, though, you do have two GPU options, again, just like the other one, but you do not have the 5050. Here, you start at the 5060, that's where they overlap, and then you can go up to the 5070, interestingly. So between the two of them, I mean, if you're going to get, they're both going to offer the same GPU, 5060, same performance, and then the CPU, it's your choice which one you're going to get. Pick the one that's better for you. Probably just get whatever was one cheaper, honestly, because the GPU is going to be the same and the CPU is close enough to not really matter. Okay. If you want to get the lowest price, 5050, you're going to get the AMD 260. This one here. If you're going to potentially get the highest price one, you're going to be jumping into the AMD 350 with the 5070, which will give you a fair bit more performance. There's about a 20% performance gap between the 5050, 5060, and then 15 to 20% between the 5060 and the 5070. But they're all the same VRAM, so just be aware of that. Then there's the big boy here, which is obviously a larger screen, so you get larger screen, obviously. There's a few different differences here. So the first CPU option is an AMD 8745HX. Do not recommend this CPU. It's an 8-core CPU. You're going to be sacrificing a lot of the benefits of the other ones and also performance on here. So just ignore that one. Unless the price is crazy, just ignore it. You do have a couple other CPU options here. 8945HX, 9955HX. Those are basically the same CPU, to be honest. Like one's Dragon Range, one's Phoenix Range, but they're basically the exact same CPU. 16-core desktop, actual desktop CPU, and 7950X, 9950X, and then they just basically stick it onto a socket, into a soldered motherboard and give it like a voltage drop and a wattage drop. That's all they do. So they are very powerful actual desktop level CPUs, and they are basically the same. So pick whichever one's cheaper. If someone said you want 8945HX or 9955HX, if the price is the same, I'm going to get the newer one. But if they're not the same, I'm going to get the 89 because it's exactly the same performance, basically. On this laptop here, you have two GPU options. You have the RTX 5060 right here, and you can actually get it up to a 5070. Because this is such a powerful CPU, I mean, some cases you may want to get up to 5070. I've already tested that exact configuration with the 5070 in the past. But today I decided to get the 5060 because it's, the price-wise, it brings it actually closer in price to these 15-inch ones. So we can do a comparison on, 3 laptops that are all going to be in the same realm in terms of price. Which one should you get? So outside of the obvious differences with the CPU, there's a couple other differences. Size. So the 16-inch is a larger laptop, slightly larger and a little bit thicker, but it's not hugely different. We'll show off that chassis difference in a minute. We'll get into that. But there is another very significant difference. The laptop here, the 16-inch, AMD is the only Lenovo Legion in 2025 that offers a high-resolution 1600p IPS screen. And this is insane to me that there's only one singular laptop in 2025 that has that from Lenovo in these Legion laptops. It's crazy to me. Like, Lenovo, are you actually drunk with this decision? Let me tell you why. Advantages of OLED are absolute blacks. Okay, so now moving on, because that's the only advantage. Moving over here to the IPS, we have multiple advantages. We have anti-glare versus glare. Anti-glare means you're not going to be looking in a freaking mirror all the time when you're trying to do work or consume content. So that's an advantage, right? You're also going to get a higher refresh rate, 240 hertz versus 165 hertz. So it's a faster screen, faster response time, faster refresh rate, and it's anti-glare. That alone makes it worth it to me, and everything else is the same, right? You're going to get 100% DCI-P3 color space, 100% DCI-P3 color space. So the color are going to look the same. They're going to look lovely in both of them. The only real advantage on this OLED is the absolute blacks. And yes, they are nice. It is nice to get absolute blacks, but you sacrifice a lot of things such as text fringing, eye fatigue, so from PWM flicker, burn-in risk. So, I mean, and horrible glare, because it's glare, literally says glare. And you sacrifice all those things for some nice blacks. Whereas on the IPS, you only sacrifice a little bit of blacks. So that is a major consideration. I'm not telling you which one to buy, but don't get gaslit by people saying you must buy an OLED screen, because that's just not right. Okay, and here we are, looking at the products here on my desk, if we have room, that is. We can see here we have the Legion 5 Pro. This is the AMD model. I've done the Intel long ago, many months ago. Look at those fingerprints. And then these are the Legion 5 non-Pro, just the kind of standard ones that are a little bit smaller. So this on the left is the 16-inch model right here. These here are the 15.1-inch models. I have 2 of them here. I have mine. They're all mine. I own all of them, but this is the one that I use as a primary device right now. This one here is a AMD 260 with a 4060. This one here is an AMD 350 with a 5070. It's going to be interesting to compare. This one over here is an AMD 8945HX, so a different CPU kind of power. The biggest difference, though, outside of that, is that we have a 4060, and the one underneath has a 4070. The reason I'm bringing in the 4070 model is these are generally slightly cheaper laptops. Not necessarily, but generally speaking, they're slightly cheaper. So you can often, you can go with the cheapest model here, which is going to be, this is the absolute cheapest that I have here on the table. And then you can step up to either this one, which has the better CPU, well, equal CPU and better GPU, or you can go over here, which is going to give you the same GPU, but more CPU power. So a few different options you can go with here. Do you want to get bigger or smaller? Do you want to get the cheapest option here? Or do you want to pay a little bit up for 5070? Or do you want to pay a little bit up for a CPU? Your options here. So let's get the 5070 out of here later. We'll bring it in later just for some data. They're literally the same chassis. The difference is the spec. So that has a 5070 and a different CPU. Otherwise they're the same. So I've been using this for a couple weeks now. You can see that it does accumulate fingerprints. They are generally speaking the same looking laptops though. They are generally speaking the same type of chassis here, but they do have some variations here. We'll bring in this for like actual shipped weight rather than unshipped weight. We'll also open them up, but we can see here there's a little bit difference of a footprint, a little bit difference of a thickness. So the bottom one it's reasonably thin. I mean, for like a pro laptop, it's not super thick, but this is definitely a little bit thinner. On the sides, again, neither of them are super thin, but neither of them are either super thick. So a little bit more thickness on the Pro, a little bit more thinness on the non-Pro. A little bit thicker on the back too. The actual top-down footprint, we'll get it stacked up there. Not hugely different, but definitely, it's still there. So you get, let's see exactly here. We get probably 1.5 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch, something like that. On the back here, we get about 1 centimeter right there. So they're relatable because there used to be a 14 inch, there's not anymore. But nowadays we're getting into this, which is this kind of in between, which I kind of like. 14 was nice, but this 15.1 just gives a little bit more size and it makes a little bit more sense to me. So the smaller one, 1953, so just shy of 2 kgs. 2,363, so almost exactly 400 grams difference between the two of them. That's not a pound, but it's getting up to that range, so that's interesting. Port selection, port locations are different. So here we have kind of similar in some ways. We have 2 USB-A on both of them. Here on the smaller one, which is interesting, I have the smaller one on the bottom now. The smaller one, this is a USB 4 port. We don't have a USB 4 port on here. That's kind of dumb in my opinion. So you get a better port here. USB 4 is, for me, very important. You lose that on here, which is kind of dumb. They do still support power delivery. The other USB-C is just slower 10 gigabit. They both support power delivery, so you can actually use these laptops off of USB-C and with reasonable performance settings. You can't go into you can't even go into performance mode, and if you're gaming heavy on balance or something, you might start to drain, but throwing it into silent mode and gaming is reasonable. The HDMI on the Pro is on the side, whereas on the HDMI on the non-Pro is on the back, which I actually do prefer that. It's a little harder to get to, but then it means that the port, you can like tuck it back and it will go away. And then the power is back here as well, whereas on the Pro here, you get those two on the side, which can be annoying for some people because you're going to have more physical dongles hooked up to that side there. All right, so that's a little bit of a difference there between the back. I do like that these are both on the back there. Then on the right side, RJ45 Ethernet, that was on the flip side on the other one, so they're just rotated. USB-A, 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 camera and all that. So they're all the same, and this side, kind of, they're just rotated around. So they actually have the same number of ports. The only real difference is the location and the fact that this one, the non-Pro, actually, which is interesting because it's not a Pro model, has the USB 4 and the other one does not. Isn't that dumb? Now we can see here the design language is basically exactly the same. I don't like black laptops because of fingerprints. These are relatively easy to wipe down. I didn't wipe it down before this because I want to show you. They accumulate fingerprints very fast. I don't have like greasy hands. I haven't eaten anything in a while. And I generally don't have overly greasy hands. But so these things will accumulate fingerprints like crazy, but they are a quick wipe down. I didn't think I sprayed this one properly, but you can see you can give them a quick wipe down. I am considering, I'm using this as my primary. I might keep it long term, like super long term. And if I do, I'll get a skin. There's different brands out there. It'd be nice if Lenovo made skins, honestly. Like legitimately, if they made skins, that'd be sweet. Or at least sold them on their website. But yeah, that's that. It is what it is. Bottom, a little bit more foot raise. Over here, slightly just like thicker, I guess, because it's going to be, you know, trying to improve airflow. You can see I got this one as a refurbished unit. This one was just brand new, I believe. So inside we can see there's quite of a difference here between the two of them. And what is that difference? Well, this one here has an OLED screen, glossy OLED. This is the only Legion for 2025 that I know of, at least in the West, that is not a glossy OLED. Me, tech guy Bo, I don't like glossy OLEDs. Why? Because they're glossy OLEDs. OLEDs themselves have pluses and minuses. I mean, you get great black, but you can also deal with, you know, PWM flicker, eye fatigue, and text fringing, that kind of stuff. But you know, that's personal preference, I suppose. But what you are going to get here is like pretty bad gloss, right? You can see, I mean, we're looking at some pretty serious gloss here. All right, look at that here. I'll move that over here. Look at how much better the light diffusion is there. It's pretty impressive, to be honest, how much, you know, having the, let's go like that, having the IPS really cuts down on that glare there. It'll be more obvious when we turn it on too, but we'll get into the screen section later. Otherwise, I mean, they're quite similar. We actually get more or less the exact same internals. This has the same keyboard as that, same everything else as that. The difference is here you get slightly more bezel, or like body, I guess, on the side there to just facilitate a larger laptop. Trackpads are the same and positioned somewhat similar, like basically very, very, very similar. Other than that, if we pull this here and we put that there, you get slightly shorter body there, just ever so slightly. Of course, you do lose some screen. Those are almost lined up, and of course, you do lose some screen. Otherwise, they're looking basically exactly the same inside. Not too bad. So let's actually open the laptop and see what's going on the inside. Okay, so looking inside of the two laptops now, they're actually very easy to get into physically. Taking off the bottom is exceptionally easy with both these laptops. You just take out the screws and it's the easiest pop of all time, so I love that. So here is the smaller 15. You can see there that there is a thermal pad. That's an extra thermal pad that I added. I was testing something before. There's a thermal pad there with a little bit of copper just to work as a general heat sink, heat soak. And then we have the rest of the internals there. Same idea here, but these guys, they actually give you two thermal pads. They're actually much thicker too. I guess thicker chassis for both of the NVMEs. This one has a little bit of a cover, so it's good. Both of them use a plastic type interior, plastic type bottom, but it's a premium plastic. That sounds like an oxymoron, but is in fact not, I assure you. So inside is surprisingly much more similar than you might think. Both of these are quite premium laptops overall, but they do have some compromises here and there. However, in the internal category, they both do a pretty damn good job. So battery is massive here. We are going to be getting a 80 watt hour battery on a 15-inch laptop, is always nice to see. Over here, we're going to be getting an 80 watt hour battery. Have the same battery. There's a little bit of room in here to add slightly more, but it's not that much bigger of a chassis. So, I mean, maybe they could put like an 87 or maybe a 90 watt hour battery. I don't know, but they're just using the same, like it's physically the same battery that way. So that's nice. I mean, it keeps their costs down, of course. They both have the same speakers. They're oriented different, but they're the same speakers. These speakers are nothing special. This is by far the weakest part of the Pro and I guess the just normal whatever model of the Legions are the base level speakers are you'll see when we get to the audio section, but they're pretty bad. I haven't compared them yet, so they might be different, but that's definitely a weak spot overall. Lots of upgradability inside of these laptops though. Upgradable Wi-Fi on both of them. They actually look almost exactly the same. We do get a single NVMe over here. This one is actually under a chassis, so we under a little cooling unit. So we have the single first NVMe over here, and then we actually have a dual RAM here, both upgradable. And the only annoying thing here is if you want to access that SSD, you have to take this whole thing off, which is not hard. You just take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws, take it off. NVMe there is fine, and dual RAM. It actually looks basically the same as this, to be honest. This one here, you just have a standard kind of little thingy there. Take that off. And you can see they do ship it. There's different configs you can get here. I have this with 16 gigabytes of RAM. This one did ship with 32, but it just happened to. So there's actually two 16s in there. This one you can config with 16 or 32 or whatever, your choice. It's nice that they ship it with a single 16 though, because then when you want to upgrade this down the road, you don't have to, change much. You literally just add another stick in there. You don't have to necessarily take out an 8 and another 8, throw them away. You just pop in your, your secondary stick and you're good to go. So that's fine there. We're just going to leave that at stock. We're going to leave both of them at stock as they came. They actually costed essentially the exact same price here, so that's kind of one of the reasons I want to config them up the same. These two costed basically the exact same price, and then this one you get a little bit less RAM, a little bit more RAM, a little bit more GPU, a little bit more CPU, so interesting. The cooling in general is pretty good on both of these. This here is not the highest wattage system here. You get an AMD 350 and this one specifically, and a 5070, neither running at like brutally high watts. My other one right here looks exactly the same inside, and it also has fairly efficient stuff, AMD 260 and RTX 5060, so basically the exact same thing. This one here also has a 5060, so technically the 5060 here can go a little higher watts. It doesn't make any difference though. 100 watts is basically more or less peak out of a 5060 regardless, or a 5070. However, the CPU here is much beefier. So 8945HS is a significantly more powerful CPU than either of these other two laptops, like massively more powerful. It also, is going to produce more heat and battery issues and that kind of stuff. So as a result, it does have beefed up cooling. So they both have very similar kind of looks inside. This does have a larger fan on both sides. They're like the actual area of the fans is bigger. The fins themselves are a different style. This has a double back fin where you have the large fin and then a small one in between each of them. This here does not have that. A little bit more VRM coverage here, but pretty similar in that regards. The heat pipes, they're a little bigger. Like this one has a big heat pipe, small, medium. This one here has like kind of a medium high one, kind of like that, and then two larger ones. It just has more general, slightly more cooling inside, but quite similar. Overall, I like the inside of both of these laptops. I'm not a fan of the speakers. You'll see when we get there. But otherwise, I mean, what else do you want for upgradable? You get 2280 support on both of them. You can just pop that out and take that little centerpiece. You can put a full one in there. 2280, upgradable Wi-Fi, upgradable RAM. I mean, it's fantastic. Like, what else could you possibly want there? So, looks good inside overall, and actually kind of similar across the two of them. Okay, so we can see here that we have two screens that are off. It's a little exaggerated just based on the lighting, but obviously you can see, this is an OLED screen, so the screens aren't actually off. There is an image going on here. You just can't see it. There you go. This is an absolute black, so the pixels are off. When it's an OLED screen, you have complete, like a true black, the pixels turn off. So you get absolute black. That's why they call it infinite black or infinite contrast ratio, because there is no color. There is no light. It's just black, so there's nothing coming out of here. Here there is, so it is radiating color, even though it's black. So you get kind of like a dark gray type thing. It is still kind of black. It's just a comparison between them. Now there's advantage, disadvantage. Here you get obviously absolute blacks, but on a glossy OLED screen, when you have a consistent like full black, you get a ton of reflectivity, right? Look at that. That's reflective as hell right there. Over here, obviously massively decreased, right? So on a full thing like this, it literally is a mirror. Like you can see me in here, right? Over here, you'd have to struggle to see it, right? It does make a huge difference, honestly. Obviously, lights like this too, like that. Like that's just a straight up light. There's no like worry about like, oh, what is that? Here you do get it. It diffuses it quite a bit, right? Actually, can't see the overhead light. Where is it? There it is. Significantly less bright, obviously. Now we'll go into some moments here. We'll see a little bit more of like fragmented black, sorry, and we'll look at colors too. So we'll pause here for 1 second here. Now it may show up a little weird on camera, but these are the same color space, 100% DCI-P3, 100% DCI-P3. They do look slightly different even in person, and a little bit more so on camera. Generally speaking, when you have a glossy screen, doesn't matter if it's IPS or OLED or doesn't matter, whatever it is. If it's glossy, it does show slightly, like it's just ever so slightly more vibrant. That's just one of the advantages of a glossy screen. Just a little bit more vibrant. The colors just seem to pop a little bit more. Whereas a matte screen, you don't get quite as much of that, but in some cases it can actually be an advantage or a disadvantage. It depends here. So we'll just go on slightly further here. These are both amazing. 100% DCI-P3 color space looks fantastic on both. Right, this looks really nice here, obviously. Can't see any difference that much when it's not like a consistent full color here. So here is an example where we have, decent blacks over here. Not the best, but decent. And then over here we have OLED. OLED blacks, let's turn that to about what I see. It does struggle to record an IPS and an OLED side by side because it tries to adjust light and dark to one of them or the other one. But you can see here, we'll actually go a little bit brighter. I see something about right there. have it right there. And you can see, you know, we have this big segment of black here. And as a result, you can really see me reflected. Whereas over here, it's cut down quite a bit. Go a little bit further. Here, same idea, right? So if you get little bits of black here and there, like little pieces of that, it will look slightly more rich on here. And you're not going to get as much reflectivity. Like I can't see myself. I'm not going to focus in those two little holes here. So it does add a little bit more vibrancy. But also at the same time, it's also less noticeable when you have not such large areas of black, right? A lot of time people are like OLED for, you know, content consumption, games, that kind of stuff, but you actually end up with very large black areas in like a dark scene or something, and it looks more vibrant. But at the same time, if it's super reflective, you're just going to see your face reflected in there. In a dark room, obviously you won't, because it's a dark room, so you're not going to see your face reflected in there. But if you're in a bright environment, it can be quite annoying and irritating, to be honest. But overall, that's quite nice there. So here's another image here we can take a look at here. I just paused it. Again, they look basically the same. There's a little bit of variance. It's hard to see on camera. Like it actually looks more exaggerated on camera. That's weird. I guess that's just the way the lighting is. To me, to my eyes, they look basically the same. Greens and reds, I mean, they look a little bit more vibrant on a glossy screen. It has nothing to do with OLED, just a glossy screen. But again, the reflect, I don't know, there's something about a matte screen that I just like. It just, I don't know, it's hard to describe. It's easier on the eyes is part of what it is here. You know, OLED screens can be a little hard on the eyes. The reflections, trying to deal with the reflections all the time, but they do look more vibrant, like whatever. Glossy screens will definitely, you know, trying to handle reflections on a glossy screen is pretty problematic. If it was a non-glossy OLED, sure, that wouldn't be an issue. But like you can see up here, it's hard to see. Like there are little bits of black in these scenes here, but this still has pretty good contrast ratio. So unless you're in a large black consistent, like contiguous image, you're not really going to notice that much. Like I can't see any difference there. I guess maybe in it's like a bright scene like this, I can't really tell the difference here. I guess if you really like put it side by side and pixel hunted, you'd be like, okay, it's like slightly better blacks like in here. The glossy does add a tiny bit of vibrancy, but you really have to compare screen by screen. Either of these screens in a void, like if you picked up this screen and started using it, you'd be like, man, that's a nice screen, like such a nice screen. And then here you might be like, man, the blacks are a little nicer side by side. But then you have to deal with the reflections, right? So it's all going to be personal preference here. I mean, it's actually not bad to come in here and use YouTube, especially in like a dark mode, because I can see myself reflected in all these things. Yes, it does look better. The blacks look better here for sure. But like I'm constantly trying to deal with, you know, myself being reflected in these. And this is my laptop. Well, mine's the other one behind me, but I have the same model as my daily driver laptop. And it does bother me. I mean, it's a beautiful screen. I love it. But the reflectivity does drive me crazy. Whereas here, it's just not as much of an issue to deal with that as much. So just be aware of that. Something to be concerned about. It's your choice, right? You can sometimes find that if you are in Windows and looking at things like text, I do find that no matter what the case, whether it's a glossy OLED, non-glossy OLED, doesn't matter. I do find that text fringing of a sort is a little bit of an issue with OLEDs. It's going to be impossible to record, honestly. I can never get it to show up on camera. But if we come in here, if I can show that now, you can't see it, unfortunately, but I'll just describe it. So with an IPS, the way that the pixels are, you know, they're square pixels, you don't get like a fringing type effect. So the text is just very easy to read. Incredibly easy to read, no problems there. With an OLED in general, not every OLED, but you know, these OLEDs here, you actually have triangular shaped pixels. So what happens is there's a little bit of, they don't line up properly. So Windows is designed to run on a non-OLED screen, generally speaking, the clear type font. So it just looks better here. And when you come onto an OLED type screen, most OLED screens, not all of them, but most of them, you do get a little bit of a haloing effect. It's very hard to show on camera. Honestly, it's like near impossible. My phone like just can't. You have less risk of OLED burn, and of course, that's one thing to be concerned with. You also have no PWM flicker. It's going to be just generally easier on the eyes. I find it much easier on the eyes, text specifically easier on the eyes. And when I use an OLED for extended periods of time, I end up getting eye fatigue. For sure, I get eye fatigue. Add on top of that, a glossy OLED where your eyes are constantly trying to focus on the text and that and not focus on, like you can see my hand there, right? You're not trying to constantly focus on the reflectivity of my hand, right? My eyes are like, okay, am I supposed to focus on my hand back there, right there? Am I supposed to focus on that? Or am I actually supposed to focus on the text? So your eyes kind of are working harder. So I find that I get eye fatigue with an OLED significantly faster due to PWM flicker, text clarity, and then when it's glossy on top of that, you get also that focus issue there. It depends what you're doing. If you're only doing gaming content type stuff, movie watching, you probably will not care. And then you'll love the OLED. Look at this, just AI slop. Jesus Christ. Okay, so we'll do an audio test here. I believe they should sound like more or less exactly the same. They have the same speakers. There might be slight differences just based on like chassis depth and size and that, and like how much resonance you get. So the bigger one might sound better, but I mean, it's going to be so minimal. I probably will say right off the bat, they're going to sound exactly the same, which is okay at best. Let's come here. Okay, I was completely wrong. They don't sound the same. They have the same speakers technically, and it's not unit-to-unit variance because I have this one and then I have the one behind me, and they sound exactly the same. I already tested it. These don't have the best speakers. They're okay. They're not tinny or rattly or like too hollow or anything, but they don't have any bass, and they don't just have any like real fullness. They're like fine for like a very budget gaming laptop. It's like, all right, it's fine, whatever does the trick. They actually sound a lot better here. They're louder for one thing, and they just sound richer. Little bit more bass, not a ton, because it's, you know, they don't have just a ton of bass in general. There's a little bit more bass, just a little wee bit more bass on them, and honestly, it does actually help a bit. And then the fullness of kind of the mid-range actually helps quite a bit. So oddly, I did not expect that to happen, but they do sound better. I mean, I guess Pro is finally earned somewhere. A little bit better audio. So yeah, it does sound better. I didn't expect that. So there you go. If you care about audio, it's not going to beat out like, you know, a Yoga 9i Pro or something like that. That's way better sounding than this. Like, it's not even comparable. These are actually decent. Like, they're like a good, like, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty good. This is like, it's passable. They're fine. They're not bad, but they're not good. They're just like very much like, yeah, they're speakers and they do the trick. It is faster. I mean, more CPU, right? 16 core, 32 thread, 8 core. Just a lot more CPU on the left there. Okay, so here is something to be aware of, and that is noise, performance, especially on the CPU. Now, the 8945HX here is very powerful. It's literally a desktop chip, like a 7950X, and they just turn it into a mobile chip. So there's ups and downs to that. You can see here that it doesn't idle the lowest. We're idling at about 25, 24, just kind of hanging out. What are we at over here on this one? We are idling at 6, right? So this will sit around 20. That's pretty standard. I mean, it's not abnormal. It's a stock system, but that's just the way that it is. Here we're idling around 5, right? So they're very different ways of looking at these chips. This is a chiplet design. Desktop chiplet design. As a result, it's just less, I wouldn't say efficient, that's not the right way to put it, because it is still very efficient. It runs very powerfully at lower watts, but it idles high. So that'll affect the battery. We'll talk about that later, but it also just means that when you're just hanging out, you can see here, like it's just hanging out around 20, even 30 sometimes, just bouncing around. This thing over here, it just really has no trouble, you know, sitting at 5, 6, around there watts, just kind of doing its thing. One of the disadvantages of that is if you're in the performance mode here, when you do something on this chip here, like when you move around and you click something and you open up some files, it will kind of just do that quick burst, which can get the fan to go for like no reason almost. Like we'll come in here, you know, come in here, just go like this, YouTube. I can hear the fans going now. Not loud, but they're definitely going. Right now they're going a little bit more. Right, we're not really doing anything here. Of course, you can kill this down into silent mode. We can see over here, it's not going to affect the idle wattages. They're going to be the same, but it won't just like boost up for no reason doing stuff. Like we could load up like an Outdoor Boys channel, video here, just let it do some stuff here. And the difference here is, again, it doesn't affect the idle at all, but it's just not going to boost so much because these things boost aggressively. I don't even, like the fans might be on, but I can't hear them. I can actually very gently hear those fans. Right? So it's just a totally different way of looking at things, where here you have a desktop chip, quite literally a desktop chip, which gives it loads of power, but it also means that it is going to be loud. There's going to be noise coming out of this machine when it's doing heavy things. Of course, like I said, it's not that it's not efficient. Like you can put this thing into, like silent mode and it will still perform very well. It's not an efficiency problem. It's just the fact that it idles at a higher wattage and it boosts like crazy because it's a big boy chip. Like this is a 16 core, 32 thread. There's no P cores and E cores. This is 16 P cores, 16 P cores. That's a lot of P cores, right? It's still, I think, the third most powerful desktop, consumer level desktop chip in the world, the 7950X, behind the 9950X and the 9950X 3D. Then it would be this one. So it's very, 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 very fast. Even in eco mode, it's still extremely fast. So, it's a beast, but at the same time, it can produce some noise. So we'll come in here. I will actually prop up the back because, I'm not going to do rendering in a real world scenario with my laptop sitting down. Like nobody does that. And if you do, you shouldn't. What do we have to prop under that one? How about a DisplayPort adapter? And you know what? We'll put his bigger brother, the 9950X. It's a box, but I'll put it under there. It's actually very similar chip, to be honest. The main difference here is this has 3D cache. This one doesn't. Otherwise, they're almost the same chip, to be honest. Okay, so we'll come in here and we'll just run this. So we'll do the noisy one first. We'll do it in performance mode, see how loud it gets, and we'll see what kind of scores we get and thermals on that. Now, I do expect this thing to be a absolute behemoth in terms of raw CPU compute. It's going to use a lot of watts to get there. It's going to probably get a little hot, but it's going to be powerful. So 90, I do expect it to go to 100 or so. Maybe a little under. It boosted very briefly to 92, but so 84. I mean, this thing should be 30,000, I'm guessing, in Cinebench. Maybe higher. 28,000. This chip, you can actually put these in a laptop and put them to 100 watts. It's not uncommon. And also mini PCs. I personally have a mini PC with the same chip in, and it goes to 100 watts, and it'll get you closer to 30. Here it looks like they've made a little bit of a smart move, to be honest. They've just slightly brought back the wattage by about 20 or so on the CPU package power, which it's not really going to affect real world performance. Like it's like a 6% performance loss from 100 watts or whatever, if that. And it'll just be easier to cool. Now, it will still get up to throttling, but it's a Dragon Range CPU. Dragon Range, it's a little weird. You have to look at these. They're designed to boost as much as possible. So they boost up to 100 degrees and they just sit there. And then the clocks on that will kind of just go along. But anytime you're running a Dragon Range CPU like 7945HX, 8945HX, 99, which is Phoenix Range, but same thing, you will get the same behavior where it boosts up to 100 degrees. And I've had many, it happens all the time. People ask me, oh my God, it's at 100 degrees. Is that bad? Well, in a traditional sense, maybe, because you would then get throttling, but here it does it the opposite. Rather than going up and then throttling, I guess, and getting like performance nerf, this one will just go as absolutely as hot as it possibly can, or as much as it possibly can at that 100 watts. It doesn't jump up and down, you can see, or it's not going 90, 80, 90, it's just at 100. It locks it at 100, and then the clocks will adjust to that, and you'll get the performance that you get, clocks and wattages. So 28,000. Now there is noise, but it's not a whiny, pitchy noise. Right, it's not making a whirring sound, any annoying sounds like that. We will drop down to balanced here, see what kind of wattage drop we get. Like this thing wouldn't bother me if it was sitting on my lap. I mean, I would prefer if it was quieter, but it wouldn't bother me. Balanced actually did not affect the CPU at all. It's exactly the same. Balanced will affect CPU and GPU wattage sharing, however. So it will make a difference there when you actually are gaming. Okay, not bad. Stop that for a second. Now I'm going to go down to silent mode. I'm just curious. There was no difference in balance and performance in terms of noise, obviously. I was using the same watts. Give it a sec to kind of chill out here. Now I do actually expect it to perform reasonably well even in silent mode. Again, these are fairly efficient chips. They just idle kind of high, but I expect it to be like, yeah, I was going to say 60, but it's going a little higher. 69. So it is still dropping down, you know, 20 watts off of the peak, maybe even 25 off of the higher modes. And you can see it's rendering like super fast. Thermals are no longer throttling under this mode. This is a wattage constrained profile, obviously, from Lenovo. And Legion's silent modes are usually very effective. It's one of the reasons I actually like Lenovo Legions. They don't kill themselves on silent mode. Yeah, and it did drop performance, but still very good, right? 24,425 with a 60 watt-ish, 60 watt. I mean, you're getting into pretty high level desktop performance there. Like 7900X desktop, that's basically what that'll give you. Way quieter too. Sub 40 dB. I mean, honestly, like 99.9% of the time, you can just run it in silent mode. Even doing video editing and that kind of stuff, until you're actually exporting, just run it in silent mode. Because it's fast. Like, that's super fast. My Halo level Lenovo Yoga 9i Pro with an Intel a 285H, which is like the best, like lower wattage offering or mid wattage offering, it can't beat that in its highest profile. It's close, but it can't beat it. And this thing is in silent mode. So just be aware of that. We'll come over here. This is not going to be anywhere near the same level of performance, but it's still good. I mean, it's still good. I will splice in also the AMD 260, my personal laptop, the 260, because it's technically faster than this. This is the AMD 350. The AMD 260 is actually a faster CPU, technically, in multi-core, not in single core. So you can see here, like, it is getting to the throttling, but the fans aren't doing anything yet. Now the fans kicked in. Wattages here, like, it's still fairly high watts, right? Like, we're getting 80. So the crazy thing is this is the same amount of watts as that, right? 80 watts versus 80 watts. And you'll see here the performance different in a second. So we're getting the same, it's actually slightly higher. We're getting basically the exact same wattage profile between the two of them. The fans are less aggressive here. They spin up slower. But watch this. It's not even going to be close, right? 17,000. So this thing under 80 watts, 87 watts, which is its performance, and this thing under 87 watts, which is its performance, this is half the speed, basically. Almost, not quite, but very close to being half, right? Like this thing was, what is it, 28,000, I think it was? We're at 17, so we added 11,000 on this over here. So that's like a 70 or 80% bump. It's a huge difference in CPU performance. This is not designed to be like that. It's designed to be a more... I don't know if efficient is not really the term, because they're both efficient. It idles better, lower. It doesn't use as much battery. Like it's more efficient at the very, very, very low end. Like I'm talking 5-6 watts. This CPU is significantly more efficient, but generally speaking, they're both efficient. Okay, and we'll come over here. Go down to silent. There should be a fairly substantial wattage drop. 50. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually stop this, because this one shouldn't lose a ton of performance going from 80 down to 50. You're basically looking at the same wattage profiles almost identically, which is interesting. Lenovo is just applying a Legion 5 performance tuning configuration to both systems. It's exactly the same. I guess they do have similar cooling, so that kind of makes sense. So you can see it's taking a while, right? There is going to be a performance drop. They're not the same class, right? Like CPU performance, you're not comparing like for like here. You know, an AMD 350, AMD 260, they're just not in the same category. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just depends what you need, right? So over here now we have dropped, but not a ton, right? So this one dropped, you know, a fair bit as well, going from silent. This one here dropped a fair bit going from silent as well, but we're still at, you know, 14,000. That's very good. Like you can do a lot with that. That's still going to be a very, very, very respectable amount of CPU performance, even on silent mode. 99% of the time, again, you can run this thing on silent mode in professional tasks, and honestly, even in gaming, and you won't have any problems. You're not going to be like, oh my God, it's slow because I'm in silent mode. Not at all. And it's silent, right? Like it's just a quiet laptop. So very good. That's very, very good. I'll just splice in some of the 260 footage. Let's do some comparative benchmarks here now. So first one here is the AMD 350 with the 5070. So the 5070 here is scoring 14,421. That's good. Makes sense. CPU is scoring okay, a little under 10,000, so 9,600. It's decent. When we jump over here and we go with the AMD 260 CPU, so it's a slightly better CPU, so about 10% performance bump on the CPU, which makes sense. I mean, that is about right based on other people's tests and my tests and everybody's tests. GPU obviously lower, so we go from 14,500 down to 12,500. So that's the drop on the GPU from a 5060 down to a 5070. So you're gonna have to make the decision here, because if you really want to get the 5070, you're stuck with the AMD 350, which is still a fantastic CPU, but it's a little bit less performant. I don't think it's going to matter that much in gaming. I mean, of course, picking between the two, I'm going to take the more powerful CPU, of course, and then, of course, you can jump into the big boy. The big boy is going to give you, more CPU performance. Not that much in gaming, to be honest. It's not going to make a huge difference in gaming. Maybe a little bit, but generally speaking, you're going to see that benefit in professional tasks. So that's your choice if you want to do that. It's going to be much more powerful in professional tasks, not do much in gaming. And then the graphics score is essentially the same. It doesn't really make a big difference. 5060 is 5060. Even with that extra wattage, you're not looking at much of an improvement, just a little bit. Battery life is where things matter actually quite a bit. So when we come over here, we look at the AMD 350. This is where the best battery life is going to be. So just hanging out here in Windows, idling, actually full refresh too, just hanging out here in Windows, we're burning around 10 to 12 watts, just depending on what's going on. So you can just divide that out. You're going to get yourself 8 hours battery life, something like that, maybe 9, just kind of hanging out. Once you start browsing, you're getting 6 to 8 hours. Very reasonable. Moving over here to then the AMD 260, which is okay. It's not as efficient. It's a older CPU. It's actually a refresh of a refresh of a refresh. And I've typically found that this one will idle around 10, 12, 13 watts, depending. It's a little higher here, but it's just not debloated Windows system. So I find it around 12 to 13 watts. So I would say probably 20 to 30% worse battery life here, but you're still going to get, 6, 7 hours here. So yeah, if battery life does matter, get the AMD 350. It's going to give you the best battery life out of the three for sure. And then looking at the big boy, this is where the battery starts to get kind of bad. We're idling well over 20. And this is, as soon as you touch the GPU, the system, the CPU goes up. So this is like true idle. You're probably looking at, I don't even know, maybe 3 to 4 hours if you're lucky, just kind of truly idling. And as soon as you start moving around Windows, this thing will jump up to 30, 40 easy. So these AMD 8945HX, these Dragon Range chips, you're looking at legitimately like 2 hours of battery life. So yeah, just be aware of that. Just coming over here then to YouTube, 1080p, 60 YouTube, AMD 350, it goes up obviously to about 12 watts here. Still looking at, 6, 7 hours, somewhere around there. That makes sense. Going to the AMD 260, it does jump up as well, an extra couple watts again. So, cut off half an hour or something like that off of that. It's still respectable. It's hard to compare these in, the exact same scenario, everything exactly the same, but more or less it's just makes sense. The AMD 260 is going to be a little bit less efficient in terms of battery life. Then, of course, going over to the big boy, just even once I let the video fully buffer here, we're sitting at about 30 watts, just with a YouTube video, just gently playing in the background, not moving around Windows. So again, you're looking at 2 hours if you're lucky. If you have a YouTube video on and you're doing anything else at the same time, maybe an hour and a half. So just be aware of that battery life issue. Okay, so here we are in the game on the AMD 350 plus the RTX 5070. So in this case here, what we have going on is we have more GPU, less CPU. And let's wait for Kurt Hansen to shut his stupid ass mouth because he kills frame rates. So stupid that the guy's in the game and kills frame rates. There you go, look at that. Whatever they did, they coded it so the dude talking kills frame rates. Anyways, so full screen here, 1600p. We'll just do the same settings on both. We're not going to do ray tracing. So what we'll do is we'll go ultra, 1600p. Just put like a medium, like a medium kind of setup here. We have ultra settings, but we'll go DLSS transform model on balance. Just kind of like a reasonable setup here. Let's see what we can get here. And so, yeah, the GPU here, I mean, the 5070, it has the same VRAM amount, and you can see there we're just squeaking under, right? So if I turn the settings up, we'll actually hit a VRAM limit, and the 5060 and the 57 will perform the same. So let's not do that. I mean, I guess that is its own argument, the fact that the 5070 has the same RAM. But if you can keep it under the VRAM, we'll see what we can get here. And that's, a 75 level experience over there, 80 over here. So I think we're going to be, this is Dogtown, which is really heavy. So you're going to be looking at about 75 to 80, I believe. Even 70 down there, to be honest. Let's kill that off. Let's do another walkthrough here. You can see the GPU is obviously at 100%. The CPU is getting hit pretty hard. I mean, it's Cyberpunk. It's a fairly CPU-heavy game. And even with just a 5070, the AMD 350 is getting hit pretty hard in this game, right? If you were to play a less heavy CPU game, it wouldn't matter as much. The 0.1% loads aren't the best, but otherwise it's running fairly well, as we can see. Okay, now I'm going to do balance mode. Won't make a huge difference, but we'll show you we're at 104 watts on the GPU. CPU is... oh yeah, this one, it doesn't show the CPU watts, unfortunately. So we'll come in here, we'll go down to balance mode. The GPU is dropping down about 25. And we actually won't lose 25% performance. We might lose 10% performance, maybe 15 at most. Maybe less about 10 frames or so, if even that, for 25% wattage. The 5060 and the 5070 are both... Person's carrying a basket. 5060 and 5070 are both very efficient. Just the way it is. Okay, so now we'll do a walkthrough down on silent mode, which is going to be a big performance drop, but it should still be reasonable. Yeah, 50 watts. So now we're at half the wattages, essentially, of full under this laptop. This laptop will supply 100 watts. We can see here, even on silent mode, the performance is not that much down. Right now we're at half the watts, 50% watts, certainly not 50% performance drop. We've dropped about 20 frames, which would correlate to, I don't know, 25 to 30%, something like that, performance, but 50% less wattages. So once again, I reiterate, the benefits of the 5060 and 5070 aren't that they have a lot of raw power, because they kind of don't, but they are very efficient. So this laptop is going to be quite comfortable on the lap, literally, when you're gaming. And the and the AMD 350 here is also very efficient. So it's getting hit pretty hard here, to be honest. But this is a fairly cool scenario here where, it's going to run pretty quiet. So what we'll do is here, we'll come in here, kill that off. We'll check the noise under here, and we'll go back to hot mode after. Barely above ambient. My laptop is basically the same, the 5060 with the slightly better CPU, and I game on it on my lap all the time, and it's super quiet. The one thing Lenovo does very well is the quiet modes. My God, do they just nail it. That's one of the reasons I like Lenovo Legion laptops, specifically the Legions, is their quiet modes they're so good. Like, they're tuned well. A lot of laptops, you throw them in the quiet mode, they become useless for gaming. Lenovo they allow enough power to the CPU and the GPU to make it viable under silent mode, which is why I have whole videos called silent mode gaming on like the 4060 and the 5060 and that, and they're always done on the Legions. So here's full power mode. Let's check the noise. I mean, it's reasonable, right? Let's try a less CPU heavy game, more GPU heavy, and see what happens there. Okay, here we are on the AMD Beast variant. Significant time jump. I listened to some guy play Chrono Trigger and Streets of Rage 2 on his keyboard for 5 hours. Okay, so we can see here, remember what I said about the temperatures in the CPU section? See how it's 100 degrees? That's fine. It's supposed to do that. This is a Dragon Rage CPU. It's not throttling. It will boost up to 100 degrees, and then whatever clocks it can get out of that, whatever wattages it can get out of 100 degrees is what it does. Of course, if you cool it better, then when it'll be able to do more with 100 degrees, but just be aware that's how it works. GPU power, again, 5060, full wattage 5060. This system's having no problems here, sustaining actually slightly higher watts, 111 and 70, no problems. It has the more powerful CPU, but the lesser GPU, and it's doing actually pretty well. It is behind, obviously, because we're going from a 5070 down to a 5060. Makes sense. Same exact settings. Right. It's pretty loud, but same idea. I mean, we're like working with similar watts as the other one, so it's similar volume and kind of similar cooling. Slightly bigger fans, I guess. Yeah, so I mean, it is not getting the same frame rate as the 5070. I mean, it makes sense. 5070 is what, 50 to 20% faster. Until you hit VRAM, you're not going to have. It is just straight up faster. But it's still getting above 60. I'd say we're probably about 10 to 15 frames lower, maybe 10, yeah, something like that. So that's about 15 to 20%. It's pretty much exactly where you think. This CPU is not going to have any problem at all. No problems driving a 5060 at all. Like, it could do way more GPU than this. Let's go like this though. It's fairly loud. Let's go down to balanced here. See what we get for watts in that. So, I mean, it's dropping 25 to 30, but I mean, it had a higher overall wattage in general. So the CPU is way down, like 40 now, so 30 drop. Of course, my ceiling vent AC came on, so we won't do a noise test yet, but we're actually not losing many frames because we're not, like the 5060 and the 5070, between 95 to 100 watts and 110, 115 doesn't mean anything. It's pretty much peaked at 100 or so. Adding 15 more watts, that doesn't really do much. I've never looked at this before. Oh, there's like records and things. So cool. I never paid attention to that before. I just want to come through and just look at stuff one of these days. Anyways, yeah, so it's not really making a big difference there. The noise is way down, even with the ceiling fan. Okay, and the noise level is down. So we dropped like 3 or 4 dB, I guess it would be. A little bit quieter. And fairly minimal performance impact. So balance is where a lot of people are going to want to be a lot of the time. This one is louder than the other one, though. I would say unbalanced. Let's go all the way down to silent here, see what we can get for performance. I do expect a little bit of choking here, not because of the GPU, but the CPU maybe. Yeah, see, it's actually, so it is doing a power sharing issue here. So it is a hungry CPU, and I mean a hungry CPU game, and it is trying to feed those watts into the CPU. The 5060 can perform at 40 watts, but that's pretty low. I wouldn't want to go much lower than that. 5050 is more comfortable down there. 5050, 5060, 5060, 5070, you kind of do want to be around, I mean, you want to be higher than that. You like 50 watts, something like that. For the 5050, because it's lower, it's okay, but yeah, it's a pretty big drop in performance here to go to silent. I do consider this much. It's not the 5060 that's the problem here. I think it's the CPU. Just the combination of the two of them, like sucking up watts here. But to test this, let's go like this here. So we're going to come in here. We're going to go to Legion Space. We're going to go custom. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to come in here. And okay, so I'm going to give the CPU actually less watts. Like not too low, maybe like, yeah, let's go like that. Something like that there. Okay, GPU to GPU TGP. So we can put this up, maybe even 80 is fine. CPU short term, no, get out of here. GPU to CPU, nope, I don't want you to give anything. CPU to GPU dynamic boost, I guess, but it's not going to do it. Okay, so now what we have here is we have an 80 watt GPU, and I'm basically turning the CPU down quite a bit. Let's see what happens. So the CPU, it's going to boost. I want the boost to run out and it try to drop down. It might just force itself to be higher based on the modes there. Yeah, it's this here. It's just a hungrier CPU, and they don't let it go below 60, probably because it'll start to choke. All right, like even if we bring these things down, that's way too low. Let's go like that. Short-term power limit. Maybe if it runs its course, it'll start to drop down. There it goes. There you go. Like, it's a pretty powerful CPU. I wouldn't go too low on it. Right? Like, it's... And the GPU is doing okay, so let's bring that down. Not so low where it was like 40. Let's try 50, see what it does there. So this is like a more reasonable split, because it was like 39 to 40 before. And yeah, you can see it is adding 10 frames. Before it was at like 35, now it's at 45. It's quite a bit more. And I think if you just add a little, it's also very quiet now. And I think if you just add a slight little bit here, you can't do intervals, eh? So we'll go 65. So the CPU all the way down, GPU I gave it 65. And this is pretty good for like a somewhat silent mode, but it's much louder than the other laptop. I mean, it's fine. You're only losing about 10 frames off of the full peak of performance, and it is much quieter. With, you know, that much CPU, that much GPU, we're looking at about 100 watts combined. It's a reasonable wattage amount, so I mean, it's not bad. Let's go into one other game. We'll go into Last of Us as well. Okay, so now we'll do a GPU heavy game where I think this system might excel a little bit here, just because of the fact that it has, I mean, a really powerful GPU. It has a powerful GPU and a reasonable CPU. The GPU here is more powerful than this. The CPU is weaker, but in a GPU heavy game like this, I think this one might actually pull ahead. Even you know, not being as much of a raw power system. So we'll just go here. I'm actually just going to kind of hang out here for a minute. I'm not going to move much. So we'll come like this here. We'll check our settings, make sure they're the same. Again, I'm going to put on like some fairly reasonable settings. So 1600p with balanced scaling, wherever that, yeah, balanced transformer model, that's fine. Obviously dynamic resolution off. Let's just make sure this is good here. So I'm just going to go preset back up, like that. So just high balanced. And we'll just sit here for a moment, just kind of see what we can get here. And you can see under the full mode here, the GPU is pulling even more now, like it's pulling the adequate amount, because the CPU is probably not quite as heavy. It's still using a lot of the CPU, but you know, relatively a heavier GPU heavy. Frame drop there. Let's just go like that. Get some. Yeah, so it depends where we're looking here, but in this scene, 95 back there, 82 with the further draw and all the lights. Some drop downs, but it's not a big deal. So we're looking. It depends on the scene. Like here, you know, it's way up, like that. Look at that. It's way up there, 90 up to 120. It's pretty impressive, to be honest. Coming back here, it'll go down quite a bit. Now the VRAM, once again, it's borderline 76, but we're okay. I mean, we're just squeezing it under, right? If I turned off DLSS and potentially turned up the textures, we would see VRAM issues. And the issue is there's no reason to really compare the two, because they're both going to hit the same VRAM wall. So they're both going to suck once you turn up the VRAM, once you turn up the settings and hit a VRAM issue. We can do it like kind of for the sake of doing it, I guess. So we'll come in here and we'll turn DLSS. Let's turn it down by 1, so it's you know, less effective. I mean, we can even turn it off, to be honest. We'll go like that. Let's just turn it off. That alone might make it hit the VRAM limit. Now, some games, when they hit a VRAM limit, they detexture. And so your frame rates stay up, but they just secretly detexture. It's actually hard to see when that happens. In some games, they just become potato in terms of frames. Right, so I'm turning that up actually here, and it's not affecting the VRAM, which is pretty suspect on here. But I can definitely tell it's probably hitting the VRAM, because it looks pretty, like, look at that drop there. Look at those drops, right? So that's the issue with, you know, hitting VRAM. This is not reporting probably correctly, because again, it'll report the way it is. But look at how bad the lows are now. And they're not really recovering. Like I can do that again. A lot of that is the textures. So as long as you can keep it within the VRAM limits, it'll run okay. But now let's kick over to the big boy and see what more CPU and less GPU gets us. Okay, here we are in this area of Last of Us. I would also like to point out that this is a damn nice IPS, is it not? There's no difference here in terms of color, vividness, and brightness between this and the OLED. The OLED does have better blacks, but I mean, we don't have so, like, in these tiny little areas, maybe you'd notice, maybe some of these very small details. But I'm telling you, once you, look at this, once you get into a screen that is a very high quality IPS with it's bright, crisp, and has very good color space, it's going to look gorgeous, right? And you don't have to deal with any type of reflections. This is why I prefer IPS, right? People will think I'm crazy, but yeah, nice blacks are nice, but to sacrifice so much other things like text clarity, eye strain, and reflections, it's not worth it for me to just get some nice blacks, right? It's such a nice screen. Look at this. Anyway, so the performance is good. Not matching the 5070, but good. The 5070 could get like 115 over here, 110. Again, 15% faster. It makes perfect sense. Pretty much exactly as you'd anticipate. It's a very GPU heavy game. Of course, it hits the CPU as well, but it's very taxing on the GPU. It's just, there's a lot going on. Look at the horse. Going to silent mode here. It's doing okay on silent, actually, because this CPU is not such a hog here. It's letting the GPU have some power. Balanced, I think, is going to be just fine. It's so much quieter. You know, in games that aren't super CPU heavy, like Cyberpunk, game like this that, you know, it's reasonably CPU heavy, but it's much more GPU heavy, going into a balance mode, because, you know, you're going to get your 90 to 100 watts in the CPU is not going to be pulling us, and it's comfortable with that many watts, and it's just so much quieter. You can hear it, but it's not irritating me anymore. So yeah, I mean, this laptop is not as good as honestly, in gaming, it's not as good as the other one. In the 5070 configuration, you can get this with 5070. Then it would just be objectively more powerful. But, you know, very powerful CPU in the games that I'm playing, very powerful CPU. Then with, you know, a moderate 5060, it's great, but it's not going to match up with a lesser CPU and a better GPU, especially at 1600p. So yeah, I mean, you can get this also with the 5070, of course, right? Then it's just going to be objectively faster in every way. But, you know, the little Legion with the slightly lower CPU, well, it's a lot lower CPU and slightly faster GPU, does outperform in gaming. Now, if you are doing things that are very CPU heavy, like heavy code compile, just generally very CPU heavy tasks, the AMD 350 and the AMD 260 are not slow. They're just fine, but they're not going to match up with the behemoth like the 8945HX. So be aware of what you're getting here. Okay, so this is a very complicated video for me because there's so many different moving parts here. But let me tell you what I basically have as my takeaway here. So the AMD 16-inch model, the AMD Legion 5 Pro, AMD versus Intel. The Intel is just a better chip. The Arrow Lake HX, 255HX, 275HX are just better than the AMD, just in every way. Just in every way. They offer essentially the exact same raw performance, but the battery life is massively better. They idle lower, and they just consume less watts, and they're also quieter. So I prefer the Intel model of this laptop, like, fairly significantly in terms of just the CPU to CPU. It's just a better CPU. The downside of the Intel model is that you get that brutal glossy screen on those laptops. They're just so glossy, right? You don't have that issue on the AMD model here. So it's insane to me. It is insane to me. And I think it's actually kind of dumb, Lenovo, to be honest. To be frank, it's kind of dumb. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I just don't want to beat around the bush anymore. It's a stupid thing that this is the only laptop from the Lenovo Legion with a 1600p IPS screen. It's the only one. It's insane. It's 2025. Like, you offer one SKU with that. Like, why can't the Intel models have that? It's the same laptop. Just put this screen in the Intel models. Give it an option. Or let us configure it. Even if we have to order it and get it built, it's fine. It's literally the same laptop. You know, I get why maybe you don't have an IPS for this. I would love to see an IPS on these 15-inch laptops. They become like essentially perfect laptops in my opinion. But I get why you don't, because you just don't physically have the screen. I'm guessing you don't have a 15.1-inch IPS screen. So, okay, you get a pass on that one. But you have the screen here. It is here in front of me. I'm looking at the screen. Why is this not on the Intel model? Because I don't want this laptop. I don't want this AMD CPU. I don't like it. The 8945HX is an incredibly capable CPU. It's awesome CPU, but I want it like it's in here. This is the same CPU. 7945HX in this tower, right? It's the same CPU, and it offers awesome like desktop level performance, upward level desktop level performance, and it's in that tower. But I don't care about the battery. It doesn't have a battery, and the idle watch is not a big deal. Like I don't care. It's not sitting on my lap. So yeah, it's just not the best configuration. I don't like the CPU in this laptop at all. I don't like the 8945HX. I don't think it's a good CPU for laptops. It was okay in the past when Intel only had, you know, the 14900HX, which is also not very good. But now we have the Arrow Lake stuff, 255HX, 275HX from Intel. There's better. There's just objectively better chips than this. So that's that there. Whether you get this one, Intel or AMD, it doesn't matter. Just, you can slot in the Intel one or the AMD one versus the smaller one. If you need that extra CPU performance, the 5 Pro on Intel or AMD will offer better CPU performance because you're getting those HX chips, which are monsters. And if you get the Intel version of it, the Intel version of this here, the HX, will also give you good battery life. So you get almost no trade-offs. It's just going to be a better laptop than this in like really every way in terms of performance. You just get a better CPU, more powerful, still parks well, and the GPU will be the same. The benefit of this thing is it weighs nothing. It's super light, super thin. I mean, I love these laptops, to be honest. I like this 15.1-inch. I think this is the best thing Lenovo's done in terms of like innovation. The 15.1-inch chassis is just perfect. I don't like the black with the fingerprints, right? I don't like that. And I don't like the glossy screen. I just don't like some things about it, but I do like the idea of the laptop. The performance is good. Everything's fine, and it's a perfect size. So if you're doing a lot of moving around, you need something that's light, going to give you good battery life. This is actually a very nice laptop, as long as you're okay with the glossy screen. Which one do you get? The AMD, the two CPUs don't really matter. They're basically the same. Doesn't really matter, to be honest. Just decide on the GPU. Do you want the 5050, 5060, 5070? Your choice. Just pick the power that you want. They're all good. Just pick whichever one you want. And that's basically it. You know, then you're going to decide, you know, do you get a laptop, for example, with a more powerful CPU and a equal or less powerful GPU, or do you get the one that has the more powerful GPU? Obviously, I mean, it's a no-brainer. More GPU means more frames in most games. As long as you have a good CPU, these are all good CPUs, the more GPU makes more sense.